for joining us at yet another historical fiction coming soon video for all of you. And I'm very excited today to introduce you, if you haven't met her already, to Joanna Goodman, the best-selling author of The Home for Unwanted Girls, which I loved a few years ago, and I'm very happy the next one is coming out soon, actually today. So I'm going to read you her bio and her synopsis as always, and then she's going to take it away. So Joanna Goodman is the author of 5 novels, including a #1 national bestseller, The Home for Unwanted Girls, which was on the Globe and Mail's fiction bestseller list for 6 months, as well as The Finishing School, also a national bestseller. Her stories have appeared in The Fiddlehead, B&A Fiction, Event, The New Quarterly, and White Wall Review, as well as excerpted in Elizabeth Harver's fiction anthology, A Room at the Heart of Things. Originally from Montreal, Joanna now lives in Toronto with her husband and 2 kids, which is busy right now, I bet. And then the synopsis for The Forgotten Daughter. From the author of the best-selling novel, The Home for Unwanted Girls, comes another compulsively readable story of love and suspense following the lives of 2 women reckoning with their pasts and the choices that will define their futures. 1992, French-Canadian factions renew Quebec's fight to gain independence, and wild, beautiful Véronique Fortin, daughter of the radical separatists convicted of kidnapping and murdering a prominent politician in 1970, has embraced her father's cause. So it is a surprise when she falls for James Phénix, a journalist of French-Canadian heritage who opposes Quebec separatism. Their love affair is as passionate as it is turbulent, as they negotiate a constant struggle between love and morals. At the same time, James's older sister, Elodie Phénix, one of the Duplessis Orphans, becomes involved with the coalition demanding justice and reparations for their suffering in the 1950s, when Quebec's orphanages were converted to mental hospitals, a heinous political act of Premier Maurice Duplessis, which affected 5,000 children. Véronique is the only person Elodie can rely on as she fights her retribution, reliving her trauma, while Elodie becomes a sisterly presence for Véronique, who continues to struggle with her family's legacy. The Forgotten Daughter is a moving portrait of true love, familial bonds, and persistence in the face of injustice. As each character is pushed to their moral brink, they will discover exactly which lines they'll cross and just how far they'll go for what they believe in. That sounds so exciting. Can I just ask, when did the 70s become historical fiction? The 70s was just yesterday, wasn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
And I would love to hear you read. I don't know where you want to read from chapter 1 or wherever you are most comfortable.
Yeah, I'll start at 1.
All right, I will just hand it over to you.
Okay. 1982. Véronique and Pierre are sitting outside on the fire escape. They're 12. It's a cool, sunless day in April, and they're missing school because her father is getting out of prison today. Pierre is smoking, which is new for him. The cigarette looks absurd in his little boy's hands. Even the way he puts it to his lips and inhales, squinting his eyes, holding the smoke in his lungs like his dad does, is contrived. "You look like an idiot," she says. He shrugged. "You're going to get addicted." "I already am," he says, thinking he's cool. "My dad started smoking at 9. Well, that doesn't make it smart." Pierre doesn't say anything. Her thoughts return to her father, his impending return. Inside, the apartment is decorated with balloons and streamers. Véronique painted a sign that says, "Welcome home." Her mother made a venison stew and a chocolate cake, his favorites. Camille brought the venison fresh from a recent hunting expedition with Pierre. The fridge is stocked with beer and Pepsi. His sisters, Véronique's aunts, are bustling around, getting everything ready. Pierre's little brother Mark is napping in her room so he can stay up late tonight. It's going to be a big party. That's what the grown-ups keep saying. The excitement is a current in the air, vibrating. Véronique is quietly apprehensive, though. She's lived alone with her mother for as long as she can remember. They have a routine, a familiar, well-established system with its own rules and rituals. Her father's arrival will surely disrupt, if not completely upheave, their world. What if he's strict? Lisette is not. What if he's a slob? Lisette keeps a spotless house. What if he steals Lisette from her, monopolizes her mother's time and energy? What if her mother loves him more than she loves Véronique? What if her father doesn't like her? What if she doesn't like him? All this is running through her head as she gazes out past the trees into the back alley, where 2 tabbies are hissing at each other. "You happy he's coming home?" Pierre asks her, sensing she's not as thrilled as the rest of them. Véronique shrugs. "I guess so." It's going to be weird. Yeah. When's the last time you saw him? September, she says, his birthday. That's been the sum total of their relationship since she was 1. Sporadic visits to the Cowansville Penitentiary, Christmas, Easter, his birthday. Lisette didn't want Véronique anywhere near that environment on a regular basis, so she limited their visits to special occasions. Véronique was happy with that arrangement. She hated going there, started dreading it weeks in advance. It was a terrible, terrible place. The prison guards intimidated her. The inmates terrified her. The building was bleak. She much preferred talking to him on the phone once a week. But that's all in the past now. She'll never, ever have to go back to that place. I guess you don't really know him, Pierre says, not looking at her. I sort of do. I mean, you don't know what it's like to live with him. It's not like me and my dad. Well, obviously, she mutters, annoyed. I'm just saying, I can understand why you're not jumping for joy. Right on cue, Pierre's father sticks his head out the back door. They're here, Uncle Camille says, and put that goddamn cigarette out, Pierre. The door flies open to a burst of cheering and clapping, and her parents enter the apartment. Lisette is flushed, beaming ear to ear. She keeps leaning her head on Leo's arm, holding his hand, touching him like she can't believe he's real. Véronique has never seen her mother like this before, and her initial reaction is jealousy. Already he's infringing. And there is Leo, her father, tall and skinny, but sturdy. His hair is buzzed, he's clean shaven. His brown eyes are glistening with tears. He rushes over to Véronique and pulls her into his arms, pressing her tight against him. She awkwardly wraps her arms around his waist. She can feel his ribs through his jacket. My little girl, he says, the words muffled in her hair. He folds her into himself and holds her there, his body convulsing while he sobs. Everyone is crying. She's aware of a cacophony of sniffles behind her. She locks eyes with her mother across the room, and Lisette smiles at her through tears. Finally, he releases her and stands back to look at her. I can't believe I'm home, he says, choking up. I'm home with my wife and my daughter. More clapping. Someone puts on the music, one of his old Jimi Hendrix albums, which no one has touched since he went to jail. Lisette joins them, and they all embrace, Véronique smothered between them. Someone get me a beer, he cries out, and they disperse, and Véronique slips away. She finds Pierre in the kitchen, drinking a 50 straight from the can. Marc is lying on his tummy on the linoleum, pushing a toy police car around. Véronique sits down beside him. He's 4, 8 years younger than Pierre, with a different mother who left right after she had Marc, making Uncle Camille a single father of 2 boys. They've all grown up more like siblings than cousins. She thinks of Pierre and Marc as her brothers, especially Pierre, who's the same age as her. Lisette and Camille have each filled a void in the other's life. Together, they make a complete family. You're lucky, Pierre says. I am? At least you're getting your dad back. Véronique is quiet. She doesn't consider herself lucky. I'll never get my mom back, he says, surprising her. He never talks about his mom. Marc looks up at his big brother. You have me, he says, and I have you. Véronique scoops Marc into her lap and smothers his fat cheek with kisses. You sweet boy, she says, you sweet, smart boy. Pierre holds out his can of beer, offering her some. Don't be stupid, she says. As a joke, he offers his little brother the beer. Marc reaches for the can with his pudgy little hand, eager to please, but Véronique stops him. Let him have a sip, Pierre says. Véronique ignores him. Your brother is a bad influence, she tells Marc, smoothing his fine brown hair, which is as soft as feathers. She runs his toy police car up and down his little sausage legs, and he giggles, burrowing his head against her. She knows she will always have to protect him from his older brother. Much later, when the party is winding down and most of the people have gone home, her father pulls her down onto his lap. She can tell he's very drunk. His lids are heavy and he's slurring his words. You're so beautiful, he weeps, tears sliding down his cheeks. You look just like your mother. People say I look like you. This pleases him. He kisses her forehead. He smells of body odor, cigarettes, beer, but it's somehow fatherly and wonderful. I'm home now, he says, for good. She's staring down at the floor, a little uncomfortable. I'm going to make it up to you, he says, his breath warm in her ear. I'm going to be the father you should have had all these years. I promise. I'm going to make up for lost time. She nods, not knowing what to say. He seems to be waiting for something, a cue, an acknowledgement. He's watching her expectantly. She wraps her arms around his neck and says, okay. This seems to do the trick because he cries even harder and strokes her back and squeezes her a little too hard. And she thinks, we're going to do all kinds of things together, he says. I'm going to teach you things now. He doesn't say what sort of things they're going to do together or what he's going to teach her, but she's willing to keep an open mind. Her big concern right now is how he's going to fit inside her life with her mother. Uncle Camille and the boys leave around midnight. They're the last ones to go, and as Véronique watches them stumble out the door, she worries vaguely about their long drive back to Saint Barbe. Camille is drunk, but refuses to spend the night. I'm fine to drive, he says. I need to sleep in my own bed. Neither of her parents protest. When the three of them are finally alone, Leo looks around the room as though he's seeing it for the first time. I can't believe I'm home, he says, with my girls. He tugs them both brusquely into his arms. This is the most beautiful apartment I've ever seen. Just wait a few weeks, Lisette mutters. I love you both so much. Lisette kisses his neck, and then they kiss on the mouth. At first, it's just a peck, but it quickly turns more passionate. When their tongues make an appearance, Véronique flees, disgusted. A little while later, lying in her bed, she can hear them through the bedroom wall. It starts with her mother moaning, her father grunting, the bed creaking. She listens, sickened and fascinated at the same time. The noises get louder. Their four-poster bed is scraping the wall so forcefully it feels like her bed is moving. Her mother starts yelling like an animal. Her father is swearing and calling out her mother's name. Lisette, Lisette, calice, Lisette, calice. They don't seem the least bit concerned about Véronique in the next room. Pierre warned her. He said, you know they're going to screw like rabbits tonight. Shut up, that's gross. He hasn't done it in 10 years. My dad says he's going to erupt like a goddamn volcano. Véronique reaches for a cassette and pops London Calling into her ghetto blaster. She turns up the volume. Clamp Down mercifully drowns out her parents' sex noises, and she tries to sleep. But long after they pass out and the apartment falls silent, Véronique is still awake. All she can think about is what tomorrow and the day after will look like. Will her mother still make her toast with butter and maple syrup, or will her father request something else? Eggs, French toast? Will his dirty underwear and socks and razors and manly deodorant clutter their only bathroom? She wonders if he'll be here when she gets home from school, invading her space. She likes having the place to herself after school when her mother is at work. Will they still watch their favorite shows together on the couch every night? Edgar Allan, Detective, Chez Denise, Boogie Woogie 47, Peau de Banane? Or will Leo take over the TV with hockey and politics? She closes her eyes, her chest knotted with apprehension. Everything is about to change. A few weeks later, on a Friday night, Leo takes Véronique to McDonald's. He's been dying to go ever since he got out. The first Montreal McDonald's opened after he'd gone to jail, so he's never even tried a Big Mac. Maybe this is what he meant when he said he was going to take her place, teach her things. They drive all the way to Atwater, which is closer to downtown than she ever goes, and that in itself is quite exciting. Being with Leo is also exciting. She didn't realize how good it would feel to be out in the world with him. For the first time ever, she feels like she belongs to that rarefied cast of girls who have fathers. She never realized how much of a void it left until he filled it. Leo is self-assured and charming, so eager to protect and take care of her. Sometimes his eagerness borders on cloying. Even at 12, she's aware how much he needs her to accept him, to return his affections. His guilt is constant and unabashed, but she feels safe with him, adored. It happened so quickly, her falling in love with the idea of him. He does take over the TV every night, watching news and sports and dumb comedy shows. His stuff is everywhere, driving her and Lisette crazy. He doesn't wash dishes, doesn't put the lid down on the toilet. He's loud and opinionated, and he fills every bit of space in their once quiet lives. He's at home waiting for her every day when she walks through the door after school with a million annoying questions. And yet, none of that matters. Lisette and Véronique are smitten, both constantly absolving him of all his transgressions. They get in line at McDonald's behind a tall man in a belted trench coat, the color of pale sand. The fabric is so smooth it looks like velvet. Leo looks up and studies the menu. What are you getting? She asks her father. You tell me, he says, lighting a smoke. The man in front of them steps up to the counter and orders his meal in English. The girl serving him is French. She doesn't understand him and asks him in French to repeat his order. You don't understand Big Mac with no sauce, the man says impatiently. The girl looks flustered. Her cheeks are turning red. Large fry and a medium orange drink? The girl shakes her head. The man sighs and looks around for some solidarity. Can you believe this? The girl interrupts her coworker and asks for help. You need to learn English, the man says, raising his voice. How hard can it be? Big Mac, French fries. Véronique looks up at her father. Leo's expression is inscrutable, dark. He takes a long drag off his cigarette and exhales it into the man's back. She wonders if he's going to say something and embarrass her. Leo does not say a word. Instead, he leans a little closer and nonchalantly presses the tip of his cigarette against the man's trench coat, burning a hole in the beautiful fabric. Véronique looks up at her father in shock, but he pretends not to notice. When Leo finally pulls his hand away and the guy shuffles off to wait for his food, there's a perfect black sphere in the coat. Leo approaches the counter and orders in French. He winks at the girl and she smiles, relieved. Don't worry about assholes like him, Leo says. Things are going to change in this province. The time's going to come when guys like him won't be able to order in English. Merci, the girl says. The English guy in the fancy coat is oblivious. Either he didn't hear or he doesn't understand French. Leo smiles pleasantly at him. When they sit down across from each other at the little tables with their Big Macs and their French fries spread out on the brown tray, Véronique says, you shouldn't have burned his coat. I wanted to punch him in the face, but I didn't wind up back in jail. Ah, I'm serious. It was gabardine, Leo says, or cashmere. That coat must have cost a fortune. But you can't do things like that in the real world. Did you hear how he spoke to her, Véro? Like she was some piece of garbage. That's how rich Anglos treat us. That's what they think of us. You think that's okay? No, it's not okay. He wasn't just speaking to her that way. Do you get that? He was speaking to us that way, me and you. I can't believe how little has changed in this city since I went away. We're still second-class citizens. You just should have told him to be more respectful, Véronique says. You still could have defended her. Sure, Leo says, chuckling. That would have gone really well. He would have laughed in my face and driven off in his BMW. So instead you burned his coat? Véro, it's okay to stand up for what you believe in. I did it for that poor girl. What was her crime? She doesn't speak English. This is her goddamn province. Véronique sweeps a handful of French fries through a mound of ketchup. We have to stick together, Leo goes on. We have to stand up to assholes like him who think they own this province. They think they own us. Sometimes it's okay to cross the line, Véronique. Sometimes you have to cross the line. Obviously, her father has crossed the line before, but he almost never speaks of his crime. It's simply not discussed. The system is corrupt, Leo continues. It's screwed up, my girl, broken. I learned the hard way that if you want anything to change, you have to operate outside the system. Véronique is trying to align her father's actions, burning the coat, with his logic. You can't politely affect change, he says, waving his Big Mac around in the air. It's about agitation, retaliation. But you didn't teach him a lesson, Véronique points out. Don't you get it? You can't teach assholes like him a lesson. Trust me, I've tried. You can only retaliate. Véronique looks around the McDonald's for the man with the cigarette burn in his coat and doesn't see him. She imagines him getting home, removing his coat, hanging it up on one of those ornate antique coat stands in his vestibule, and noticing the burn. Who will he blame? I rejected this system a long time ago, kiddo, Leo says, sinking his teeth into the soft sesame bun. What is this pink sauce? It's the special sauce. Listen, you can try to maneuver around inside the system if you want, he says, with his mouth full. But if you're smart, Véronique, you'll reject it just like I did. He finishes chewing and nods his head approvingly. Tabarnak, this is a good burger, he says. End chapter 1.
Nice. Wow, he's a tough guy. He's got some lessons he wants to teach, and he's not exactly sure how to teach them. Veronique's up for a bumpy ride. It's going to be interesting. Thank you very much. So this one follows on the heels of the Unwanted Girls, which I loved. And that one came from a story about your mom, right? Your mom was involved with the Duplessis children?
No, my mom, the Home for Unwanted Girls was inspired by my mom's childhood growing up half French and half English in the 50s. It was originally just going to be like a love story between a poor French boy and an affluent English girl, which was a little bit my mom's story. And her father had a seed store and he was known as the seed man. So there were a lot of, inspirations from her life. And that was the story that I set out to tell. It was during the research of that book and the whole Duplessis era that I came across the orphan story. Right. And so, I decided that I would have my main character get pregnant and then I would bring the orphans in that way. That wasn't my mom's story. Okay. And so, yeah, this novel picks up where the last one left off, which is with Maggie's children who are grown and a new character, Véronique, and how they come together. And Elodie, who is now an adult and having come out of the mental institution, is trying to make a life for herself. So it sort of picks up on Elodie's relationship with her mother, because if you remember at the end of the last book, actually I won't spoiler alert that, but it's about their relationship. And also in the 90s, the adult orphans started coming forward. They formed a coalition. They had a lawyer. They started protesting. They filed lawsuits. And so it was a great opportunity for me to give Elodie some, I don't want to say revenge, but a little redemption. Yeah. To have her come into her own power.
Did you know you were going to write this all along when you were writing the first one? Did you plan on the second one?
No, not at all. Well, actually, when I started the first one, my original vision was that it was going to start in the 50s or 40s and span right through to, if not the present, the early 2000s, when all the lawsuits sort of came to happen in Quebec. And there was so much great political meat in those decades, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the October crisis, the referendum. So my plan was originally that one book was going to cover the whole thing. And clearly that was like too ambitious. And the book the first book sort of ended where it felt organically it had to end. Right. And I was going to just leave it there. And I'm going to say it was the first week The Home for Unwanted Girls was out. My editor at HarperCollins in New York called me, and she was very happy with the sales. And she was like, have you considered writing a sequel? And the minute she said it, I was like, oh my God, of course. It wasn't my plan, but I had so much research because I had been researching it almost my whole life. I had been a journalist. I was an intern in the 90s. So I was at the referendum and in that riot that broke out after and all of that stuff. So, I mean, as soon as she said it, I think I went home and I started writing. And I knew I wanted to include the October crisis and I wanted to cover the referendum. And so in a way, it's almost like on some level, I must have known it was going to come, but I kind of just needed can you do this? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, I didn't realize you've been doing all those years and years behind it, but it makes sense. It's funny thinking about that being history, eh? When I'm working on World War II kind of stuff and you're working on the 70s and the 90s and oh, that doesn't seem like history, but okay.
No.
Well, I'm really glad that you've done this. And I love being with you on this little team of writing Canadian history because there's so little written about our country. So many levels, so many layers of what's going on in this country that we don't talk about. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. So it came out today. Exciting. And doing any plans for the launch? Any big online Zoom plans?
Obviously we can't have any kind of an event. There's a lot of this sort of thing coming up in the next couple of months. So I'm just grateful that enough time has passed since COVID started that there seems to be a rhythm for booksellers now. They know how to market online, and they know how to work Zoom and Instagram Live, and everything is online. And I'll say, it's a lot better than, if this wasn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from not having a launch party,
Yeah.
I'm going home to order Chinese food with my husband and family and my best friend.
Perfect.
And that's going to be the launch event.
Perfect.
But that's about it right now.
Well, you get used to these talks, and it's really fun. I actually really like the fact that we can meet with people that we normally wouldn't be able to. I know when you do a book launch, you get people in your surrounding area, and this way you can go everywhere, which is pretty great.
Yeah. Well, my first book club for this book was with a group in Pittsburgh. And you know what? It's been quite heartening how much enthusiasm the Quebec politics has been received in America. Like, it's crazy. I wouldn't have thought.
That's really very interesting.
Yeah.
Are they writing to you about it, or what did they say in the book club that they wanted to know more about our politics?
I mean, first of all, my editor is, my editor is in New York, and she's the one who has been championing the story from the get-go. And when I started working with her for finishing school. And when finishing school was all done, she said, "Are you working on something else?" And I had just finished The Home for Unwanted Girls. And I said to her, like, I do have a book that I love that I've just finished, but it's very Canadian. It's very Quebec centric. And she's like, "Well, send it to me. I'm interested." And she loved it. So The Home for Unwanted Girls came through the States. It did really well in America. And she is the one who asked me for the sequel. And she was like, "I want much more of the Quebec politics." So,
wow.
A lot of the feedback from the States has been, people who have read Home for Unwanted Girls and enjoyed it and have been waiting. But yeah, I've had a couple of book clubs, and both were Americans. And I'm always surprised at how interested they are.
That's exciting. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
When you read historical fiction, it's usually, England or Europe or the States. And not so much of us. So that's great that they're interested. I know that my sales are doing better down there recently. So that's nice. They're interested in our stories. So
yeah. Well, that may be the upside of COVID for the writer. A lot of people are stuck at home, and there's a lot of time for reading.
That's
so.
And it's also a good time for us to learn to not be afraid of the camera. This is new for me. I never wanted to do it before all this happened, but that's the silver lining. I'm meeting people like you, so I'm happy. So thank you very much for reading and for speaking with me. And I'm excited to share this with everybody, and also the book, which I'm going to go and buy tomorrow because I have a mask and I'm ready to go to chapters right away.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Joanna.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.